So let's say you are a lawful permanent resident. You're a green card holder. You would like to naturalize. What do you have to do? Well, one of the first considerations is asking yourself, how much will it cost? Just to apply, naturalization fees are nearly $800 per person at the moment, and you can see from this chart how that figure has gone up since 1985, when it was less than $100, up to the present figure, or at least the representation here in 2010, of $700. These aren't the only costs. You have to produce many, many documents, and it is, in many instances, it is to your advantage to consult with an immigration attorney, and of course the costs go up with that. But in terms of naturalization requirements, apart from cost, they are the following. First of all, just beginning with age. Generally, you must be at least 18 years old, although most children automatically obtain citizenship when one of their parents is naturalized, and that's known as derivative citizenship. In other words, if you are under the age of 18 when one of your parents becomes a naturalized citizen, in most circumstances you are automatically a citizen. You do not have to follow the naturalization process. Interestingly, some people do not know that they are citizens. They do not understand that as children, as minor children of a parent who naturalized, they automatically became citizens themselves. But this is a status that is known as derivative citizenship, and it is equivalent to all other forms of United States citizenship. Another requirement for naturalization may seem obvious: residence and physical presence. The United States government wants you to live in the United States, have a close connection with the United States if you are going to assume citizenship of the United States. So applicants must have been admitted as lawful permanent residents, that is, have a green card for at least 5 years. Continuing with naturalization requirements, one of the most interesting and difficult to decipher is the requirement that an applicant have good moral character. Good moral character is not defined in the statute, although there are a number of examples that are provided in the regulations that guide immigration officers in determining whether a particular applicant has good moral character. Committing a crime within the last 5 years, a 5-year waiting period between obtaining a green card and applying for citizenship, committing a crime during that period will almost certainly mean that you do not possess good moral character in the eyes of the United States government and will very likely result in your deportation. But there are also any number of other activities short of a criminal conviction or criminal activity that could result in a determination of good moral character. These include drug abuse, alcohol abuse, failure to pay child support. Knowledge of civics and history. For many people, this is their personal favorite, at least in terms of if they know of one requirement for naturalization, it is that the applicants must know something about civics and United States history. I'd like to demonstrate for you some test questions that are provided by the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. Here you'll see you have the opportunity to take your own test, naturalization self-test. There are sets of questions that are generated anew. You can take as many as you like. They are graded. You get instant feedback on your answers, much like some of the quizzes that you will be taking in this course. But here are some examples. Under our Constitution, some powers belong to the states. What is one power of the state? Makes treaties, create an army, providing schooling and education, coin or print money. I think the answer is this one. But these are examples that you can see, test yourself, whether you are already a citizen or not a citizen. What is one thing Benjamin Franklin is famous for? And there are a list of some more likely answers than the other, including inventor of the airplane not being one of the more likely ones. What is the capital of the United States? What major event happened on September 11, 2001? So these are actual questions that are asked on the exam, and this is a way to practice, or if you're just interested, to explore those questions. Continuing with our naturalization requirements, there is English language proficiency. For many years, the INA has required that applicants demonstrate an understanding of the English language, including an ability to read, write, and speak words in ordinary usage in the English language. This is frequently tested in the interview process, which is the last step of the naturalization requirement. An additional requirement that seems at first blush to be related to a knowledge of civics and history is attachment to constitutional principles. And I've quoted the language here from the Immigration and Nationality Act. Applicants for naturalization must establish that they are, quote, attached to the principles of the Constitution of the United States and well disposed to the good order and happiness of the United States. Two things to notice here. One is, it is for the applicant to establish. In other words, the burden of proof is on the applicant to prove that these sentiments or this attachment is true or is the case. The government, on the other hand, may find evidence that this is not true and would, of course, would attempt to uncover any evidence in the background check that they conduct of all applicants for naturalization. The second thing to think about with respect to this particular requirement, attachment to constitutional principles, you might expect that, as is the case in the United States, a person living here is free to speak and to hold beliefs that others may not care for, including membership in the Communist Party. And that speech and those beliefs are protected by the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. But if you are a non-citizen applying for citizenship, those First Amendment protections are irrelevant. They do not apply. So that, for example, United States law has long excluded members of the Communist Party and others who have advocated a belief in overthrow of the government of the United States, for example, that those persons may not naturalize, that becoming a citizen is a privilege and not a right. And because it is a privilege, the First Amendment of the Constitution simply does not protect that activity. So if you are a citizen already in the United States, or a non-citizen in the United States for that matter, you're free to publish, believe, talk about, criticize the Constitution of the United States, and be not disposed to the good order and happiness of the United States, and that right is protected by the First Amendment. But engaging in those activities prior to naturalization, however, could very well demonstrate to the immigration officer examining your case that you lack an attachment to constitutional principles. The interview we mentioned is one of the last steps. This can take anywhere from 10 minutes to half an hour to an hour or more, depending upon the areas that the immigration officer wishes to explore. And then at the point that you have been awarded citizenship, to fulfill that citizenship, you take the oath of allegiance. Let's take a look at the current version of the oath of allegiance. Some remarkable aspects to it, and I think it also helps us think about what it means to be a United States citizen, what rights and obligations come with that. Here's the text of the oath of allegiance, and I'll read it if you'll bear with me. I want to comment on this afterwards. I hereby declare on oath that I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince, potentate, state, or sovereignty, of whom or which I have heretofore been a subject or citizen, that I will support and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I will bear arms on behalf of the United States when required by the law, that I will perform non-combatant service in the armed forces of the United States when required by the law, that I will perform work of national importance under civilian direction when required by the law, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, so help me God. One thing to note here is we often emphasize the rights that come with being a U.S. citizen, but it's also worth keeping in mind the obligations that come with it. The obligations that are enumerated here, for example, bear arms on behalf of the United States, perform non-combatant service in the armed forces, perform work of national importance under civilian direction when required by the law. These apply to all citizens. These apply to persons who have their citizenship by birth, as well as those who have gained citizenship through the naturalization process. So there's no difference between the rights and obligations of naturalized citizens and those who gained their citizenship by birth. We are going to look further into the question of citizenship at birth in future lectures. And I wanted to end with an image here of a very famous person who immigrated to the United States and followed the naturalization process and became a citizen of the United States, and that, of course, is Albert Einstein. In terms of the materials that accompany this first lecture, you will note that many of these are optional reading. I especially want to direct your attention to the USCIS website. That's the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service. They have an excellent website with lots of information that is useful for both those who are attempting to navigate the immigration system, whether to become a citizen or to come here temporarily on a visa. I do want to add one caveat, however. There will be many instances in which persons will need to engage an immigration attorney. I am not giving legal advice in this course, and you should also be careful with any claims in the discussion forums about legal advice. The immigration bar in the United States, that is the group of attorneys who are licensed attorneys and practice immigration law, those are an excellent group, and many of them volunteer their time. However, there are many scams out there, so it is wise to proceed with caution. In our next lecture, we'll begin a look at birthright citizenship in the United States.
The preceding program is copyrighted by Emory University.